Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and I'm delighted to be joined by someone who is sitting in Delhi, not just sitting in Delhi, his heart also beats with Indian spirit in a way which is expressed through his writings, through his columns, and of course through his lectures. A very appreciated teacher, lecturer, professor, but in essence, someone who loves to share. And I have requested author columnist Professor Dr. Sudhir Bisht to join us. Namaste, welcome.
Namaskar, Ashok ji. How are you?
Yes, we are near the Republic Day of India, and we'll reflect on some of the major developments that has caught our attention. Let me begin by requesting you to share your impression about the way 23rd January unfolded, special focus on Subhash Chandra Bose this year.
Yes, it was quite an event, isn't it? So finally, in conforming with the heartbeat of millions of people and the belief of millions of Indians that India officially recognizes the great son of India that Netaji was, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was, the popular prime minister has taken a decision that his statue will be installed at Amar Jawan Jyoti. So I think it has gladdened the hearts of most of the Indians, and it has resonated very well, especially with the youngsters. Like I teach in a college. I teach management to MBA graduates, MBA students, and BBA students. They were all very happy that somebody as patriotic, as brilliant, as amazing, and as spectacular as Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, his statue would be there in the India Gate, and students especially believe that it would inspire the youth of the country. So it's a great event, I think.
Yeah, so let us look at the life of Subhash Chandra Bose briefly. Maybe some of the main features that defines who he is remembered as. But as you recollect, you would recollect he was the first one probably in the pre-independence India to have been selected for coveted ICS position, but he declined to join that.
That
And
is
then
true.
he stayed, or rather, he worked closely with Mahatma Gandhi. So, what changed in him, in your opinion, which made him who he became by leading Azad Hind Fauj and taking a different route for India's freedom than what was recommended as well as propagated by Mahatma Gandhi?
Yeah. Netaji came from a very illustrious family, and he was very highly educated, and he had cleared his ICS exam while he was he's still in England. But the main exam is very rigorous, and after that you have to appear in a small exam, which is mere formality. And but he resigned, and he wrote a letter to the uh, whosoever was, I don't remember whom he wrote the letter to, and he said he could not join the civil services, and he resigned his position. And this position is was something which was not achieved very easily. It's very few Indians could make it. I don't recall if he was the first Indian, but he was among the first. So that speaks volumes of his conviction that he thought that he wanted to be in public space, and he wanted to do something for the society. When he returned to India, he came in contact with Gandhiji, and he was very influenced by the patriotic fervor of Gandhi. And Gandhi had already caught the imagination of the world by doing what he did in South Africa, where he was infamously thrown out of the from the train, and then he started quite a stir there when he came to India. Gandhiji himself was very much influenced by uh, Dadabhai Naroji and Gopal Krishna Gokhale, you know. And when Gandhiji met Subhash Chandra Bose, he told him to work for the Congress in Bengal, and he became the mayor of Kolkata. And he was because of his personality, because of this the way he spoke, the way he articulated, and because of his overall scholarly attitude, he caught the imagination of not only Bengalis but all of India. But there were basic difference between how Netaji approached the entire concept of relationship with England and how Gandhiji approached it. History is the handmaiden of rulers. So rulers tend to write history the way they write. Subhash Chandra Bose firmly believed that just a passive resistance to the Britisher would not expedite the cause of freedom for India. On the other hand, Mahatma Gandhi he believed in slow and steady march towards the attainment of freedom. When Subhash Chandra Bose at a very young age, when he became the Congress president in 1930, 37 or 38, and the next year he wanted to, normally a Congress president was elected unopposed till then, and it was believed that whosoever Mahatma Gandhi said, who he would become the president of the Congress. So somehow Bapu did not want Subhash Chandra Bose to be the Congress president. This was because of two reasons. One reason was that ideologically he was not on the same page with Gandhi. Netaji was not on the same page with Gandhi. If you see, the economic ideology of Netaji was he veered towards communism, socialism, and Gandhi was more towards capitalism. He was not really enamored of socialism. Ironically, Ashokji, there were only two people in Congress who were on the same side. It was Jawaharlal Nehru and Netaji Bose. Both were on the left side of the center, and both wanted India to be a socialist republic. Of course, Netaji was as handsome as Nehruji was, even some people say more handsome, and he was intellectually much stronger than Nehru. No, I'm not trying to belittle Nehru. Nehru was a great man in his own right, but Subhash Chandra Bose had the courage to talk about his ideology even in the face of Gandhi.
Okay, so let me interrupt you for a second just to request you to share your understanding about relationship between these two great men, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Subhash Chandra Bose. We are flooded with a lot of information, some probably authentic, some may not be authentic. There are some letters going around on the social media. In some, Subhash Chandra Bose is very appreciative of the contribution of Jawaharlal Nehru. There are other documents suggesting that Pandit Nehru didn't work fairly with respect to Subhash Chandra Bose, and there are tons of material going around which is suggesting as either India is rediscovering certain chapters of history, or there is a accusation that the current government is trying to rewrite the history to set a particular narrative which is pro-Hindu. In this space, what is your observation and analysis?
Okay, I would quote from Ramchandra Guha, whom I was listening to on Express podcast, and he says, to write history, Ashokji, one generation cannot write history about itself. There has to be a gap of one generation to write an unbiased history. So perhaps Subhash Chandra Bose, his contribution could have been rewritten during the 80s. But during the 80s, there was a hegemony of leftist historians, and I'm not saying that they were all from GNU. Huh? Many people have attributed this to me. I'm not saying that they were all from GNU or AMU. There are many historians, and they were kind of in much ensconced in power. If you see, most of the education ministers in India, they had huge propensity towards leftist, towards the Congress ideology, I would say. Now, Nehru and Netaji started off very, very well. They hit off brilliantly. Both were young. Both had the same alma mater in United Kingdom, and both were socialists. However, things changed. Things changed after the Tripuri convention of Congress, where although Netaji won the elections, and Patabi Sitaramaya, Dr. Patabi Sitaramaya, who was a lesser known leader, of course he was a great leader also, but not as compared to Netaji, he was not so significant. He lost by around 300 votes, and Mahatma Gandhi had put all his weight behind Patabi Sitaramaya. At that point in time, Subhash Chandra Bose was expecting support from Nehru. And he found, much to his dismay and amazement, that Nehruji did not want to go against the wishes of Gandhi. Ideologically, Nehru was with Netaji. Nehruji was with Netaji, but he was kind of completely in awe of Mahatma Gandhi. This equation also changed later, which we will come to later, as to how uh, Jawaharlal Nehru also kind of uh, tried to dominate, or I would not say dominate, but how he tried to influence Gandhiji to rule always in his favor. He was the favored son of Gandhi, as people say. So this left Subhash Chandra Bose very disappointed. So he became the Congress president, yet the Congress working committee did not support him, and people who did not support him included Jawaharlal Nehru. But Ashokji, it was not Jawaharlal Nehru alone. Sardar Patel did not support him. Dr. Rajendra Prasad did not support him. Govind Ballabh Pant did not support him. So I cannot put blame squarely on Nehru, but he was thinking that, okay, the entire world can be against me, but not Nehru. This is what Subha. So he felt cheated. I read somewhere, I will send you the quote also, in sometime in the 40s, in a moment of anguish, Netaji says that the person who has kind of hurt him most is Nehru. And mind you, when Kamala Nehru died, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was not in India. He managed to reach India, and he managed to be by the bedside of by the side of Nehru in his hour of grief. So Subhash Chandra Bose truly loved Nehru. Nehru also did not hate Netaji. But then once Nehru did not support Netaji, Netaji was a strong character. And even then he was magnanimous. But as he became president and everybody opposed him, so much so that that Subhash Chandra Bose was expelled from Congress for 3 years. And Netaji believed that Nehru could have played a part in supporting him. So their relationship became strained. I would say after 1939, the relationship was not good. However, there was no acrimony, there was no bitterness. They were not mouthing expletives on one another.
Okay,
But
so
the fact of the matter,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, because we will have limited time, so let us look at the particular period of history where Subhash Chandra Bose was trying to mobilize resources as well as raise army outside India for the freedom of India. And he also met Hitler, which again is now seen in a different light by some people while they interpret what was he doing with Hitler. What do you think might have helped him in being able not only to travel to several countries and meet all these leaders of the time, because he was officially carrying no designation. Now,
right,
this itself is a wonderful, fantastic thing, even to be able to travel to Japan and Germany, and talk to me a little bit about how Azad Hind Fauj was formed, because he was not a trained soldier, but you see him leading this army, which later on in the northeastern side of India uh, had fought Britishers.
right.
So all this, especially your take on what helped Subhash Chandra Bose achieve what he achieved.
As you know, in the World War II, Allied powers on one hand, it was pitted against the Axis power on the other hand, led by Germany, and the Allied powers were US, UK, Russia. But the important thing is that you asked me a question that how could he travel to these places? Subhash Chandra Bose was not an ordinary human being. You have to understand, he was a magnetic personality, and the fact that he won the election to the position of Congress president, even though he was opposed by Gandhi, in the political landscape, it almost, if not pitted him against Gandhi, because Subhash Chandra Bose was very respectful to Gandhi, always, always. If it not pitted him against him, he put him almost on the same pedestal with Gandhi. And he believed in the maxim that my enemy's enemy is my friend. So he thought that why should he not go and try to negotiate a kind of a deal with the Axis powers? So he traveled to Germany. He met Hitler, although he met Hitler briefly, but he met all the other people who were responsible for the nuts and bolts operation of the World War II. And he assured them that he would be able to raise an army, because 25 lakh soldiers, Indian soldiers, were deployed by the British Royal Army, British India Army. 25 lakh is not a small number. It is not a small number. They were all recruited
So yeah,
eligibly.
let me just share based on what fringe information that I have come across. It was the power of his speech, his
Yes,
ability to persuade not only these people to become a part of army, but also to have inspired many people to open their coffers, contribute generously. Many
that
rich people gave gold, and
that is true.
so which means Indian uh, NRIs at that time were also affluent people, and they loved India, and they were very much inspired by Subhash Chandra Bose to contribute and do their bit. So this is another, or probably say, this is one side of his personality, which which was connecting with a sense of truth and transparency to people, that you would open up your heart and bank, and whatever you have, you are willing to
Right.
offer with conviction that this is the right man.
Okay. His personality was magnetic, and people say if you looked into his eyes, it had something. It had what you call a kind of a magnetic attraction. He was endowed with very excellent. He was God's special creation. That goes that goes without saying. What you have to understand is that when he went and he sought an alliance with the Axis powers, at that point in time, I'm second guessing it that the Axis powers also would have helped him, because after all they organized for his trip from that place to Japan, and so they also, because at that time Germany was a powerhouse in terms of resources and in terms of capital. And he was, when the British Indian army, which was captive in the far east, he saw, see what a brilliant person Netaji was. It is not that he raised an army there and then. He said, my countrymen who are captives in the far east, I will go and talk to them, and I will tell them to really fight for the real motherland. And he went there and he convinced the people. So it tells you that not only was he blessed with a magnetic personality, he was a great strategist, and is tactical, despite the fact that he had no military training, and this was realized by Japanese. But his tactical planning was superb. So if you have
So yeah,
strategy,
Sudhir, sorry to interrupt again. So when you think about what he could accomplish at that time, you have a sense of goosebumps. I mean, this is a remarkable human being with his heart and mind at the right place. And because we have limited time, so I'll bring you to what happened when the army entered, and INA people were confronting British army, and that touch on that briefly, but more on what afterwards happened, and that Radford, some case
trials,
which, yeah,
the Redford trials.
Radford trials, yeah.
Yeah, actually, what he achieved was nothing short of superhuman efforts. I mean, I tell you that as a young person, when my grandfather used to tell me about Subhash Chandra Bose, my grandfather used to have his eye used to well up when he used to make a mention of Subhash Chandra Bose. And even today, when I think what the man achieved, I think he could not have been anything lesser than a Vishnu avatar. If you personally ask me, was aligning with the Axis powers the right thing in the long run? We don't know, because we can't second guess what could have happened, why this happened. But he went by the straight maxim: my enemy's enemy is my friend, right? And he raised a force. Ashokji, you should see the magnanimity of a man. When he raised the divisions in his army, he called one division as the Bose army, one as Gandhi army, one as Nehru army, and one as Azad army. And by Azad, it was Maulana Azad. Understand what a understand this magnanimity, in spite of the fact that Gandhiji had virtually thrown him out of the, not why virtually, he actually threw him out of the Congress party, and Nehruji did not support him, and that Azad took over. Was it Azad or Rajendra Prasad who took over from him once he left the Congress party? So these were three people who actually derailed his career in Congress, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
And
yeah. So just few
and yet
minutes.
he named the divisions after him. So he was not only brilliant, he had a heart of pure gold. That is why I say his statue should not be a normal, his statue should be of gold. This is my view. We,
I
we should
think.
contribute gold and build a statue.
Mm. So there is one line of thinking based on what we have seen in India after independence, feels that he didn't get his due credit, as well as people don't know much about all that he did. He's not extensively taught in the school system, college, etc. So some people feel that it was conscious on the part of Pandit Nehru. I don't know about that. You want to comment on that part, as well as once again, as we wind up, how significant it is to have his currently a hologram, and down the line we'll have a granite statue of Subhash Bose at such a landmark historical place in Delhi.
I am telling you, it is not a popular notion. It is a fact that as Prime Minister of India, Pandit Nehru, he spied on the family members of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And it is not Dr. Sudhir Bisht telling you this. I am quoting India Today. It's in India Today, okay? So, and he was doing it because he was still considered by the Britishers as the as a enemy of the state. So this is the reason why when the INA, when INA, when the Axis powers lost and when the INA surrendered, they were all arrested and there was famous Red Fort trial. But William Clement Attlee, who was then the Prime Minister of England, he writes, he confided in the former Chief Justice of West Bengal High Court. He was a guest of that Chief Justice, and he said by 1947, Quit India movement had faded. Most of the movements of Gandhiji, they were able to mobilize something, but they could never achieve the intended result. No fault of Gandhi, because that is how you build up a national struggle. But in 1939, Subhash Chandra Bose envisaged Quit India. In 1942, Mahatma Gandhi finally agreed to adopt that line. But this Ackley says that Indian Navy, Indian Navy revolted in Mumbai, and they caught hold of all the Britishers, and they were telling Britishers to say Bharat Mata ki Jai, and they kept them hostage. Similarly, you should understand in Balia under Chitu Pandey, they had many people roused by the sentiments of Subhash Chandra Bose. They had started running parallel governments, district governments. So what I'm saying is, Ackley says that Subhash Chandra Bose was able to transform the mood of a nation from being passive resistance giving people to a very angry set which wanted to dethrone the Britishers at all level. People wanted to dethrone them at the district level, at
So,
the subdivision
yeah,
level.
I'm
So
I'm afraid we are almost out of time. I'll make a quick comment and maybe 30 seconds for you. That comment is some people find it not fair in with the coming generation, that we are taught "De di hame azadi bina khadg bina dhal." So they say that it was not just Bina Khadg and Bina Dal, and all the contributions of Subhash and Bose is mentioned. And another point, I think he was quick in realizing who is the real enemy and
Right.
what side he has to take. That confusion, I think, did not leave Pandit Nehru even after India became independent, because we had this Maharani coming and taking a center stage in India's independence celebrations, etc. Your take, final words.
Actually, many people label Pandit Nehru as a liberal. If you go dive deep in the history, you will find many instances when he was far from being liberal. Actually, he was a kind person, no doubt about it. He was a erudite person. He was a gentleman, but he was very fearful of, his position being usurped by anybody else. He used to say that, he said, I wanted to. He many times said, I want to leave. I want to resign. And uh, one minister actually told, if you want to really leave, I think it was Rafi Ahmad Kidwai, I am ready. Nehru was very embarrassed. Nehru was very embarrassed. So, his running battle with Patel also are, quite infamous.
Yeah.
So
So maybe
it is a
we'll have
fact. Yeah, it is
another
yeah, it
session
is a
about
fact
Pandit
that,
Nehru. Yeah.
yeah,
So
it is a fact that, Netaji's contribution has not been acknowledged even 5%.
I
5%.
I think now
And
we are, yeah, I think now we are moving in that direction, and hopefully this is definitely going to inspire, because his life is amazing, phenomenal, and unbelievable in terms of what he could accomplish and influence people. And so, Dr. Sudhir Parikh, thank you very much for joining
thank you
us.
very much.
And as we talked about Subhash and Bose, we'll say Jai Hind, Jai
Jai
Hind
Hind. Jai Hind.
once again. So, thanking Dr. Sudhir Parikh and thanking Dr. Sudhir Bisht from New Delhi, and thanking all of you for being with us. This is Ashok Vyas.